Great topic here, looking at corporate culture, and this is some of the office space in the Google offices in London, and some of my students and I were lucky enough to go and visit their offices. So a shout out to Michael Wicks, who works there and was kind enough to show us around. But it's often used as an example of a different type of corporate culture, and they have really interesting books on those shelves, and there's a lovely big area you can see, huge sofas, squashy sofas, nice big cushions so you can relax there. Very kind of open area, but quite ambient, quite cool colours, nice light and airy area, really inviting area, inviting people in, inviting people to sit there quietly, but also a great space to sit with others and socialise with others. And really what they're trying to achieve here, I imagine, is getting people talking to each other. And these books on the shelves are quite cultural books about art, really creative books, get those creative processes and creative thinking going. So corporate culture is a great area. So we need to understand what corporate culture actually is, firstly, and the effect corporate culture has on a business, and the benefits and the problems of having a quite strong corporate culture. So this is a famous quote about what corporate culture is, and it's the way we do things around here. But in reality, in a business, and in a business that's quite large, there's no one culture, because you tend to have different teams, different departments, and they might have slightly different cultures as well. But there's different ways of doing things, and if we look at this model by Shine, quite famous again for looking at culture, it identifies the 3 levels of culture. So artifacts are very much the visual elements of culture. So what the building looks like, what's on the wall, what's displayed. When we're looking at that picture of Google, that's very much, this is the artifacts kind of basis of culture here. What people wear, the dress code, those types of things. The sort of kind of acronyms that people use, acronyms being abbreviations, how people speak to each other, whether people swear at work or not. I've worked at a few organisations where some organisations were very sweary organisations, I have to say, a lot of the F word. Sometimes worse as well. Not the organisation I work at the moment. It's a very polite organisation. We don't swear here. Another level of culture would be the values. So very much looking at what was in the mission statement before, what matters to the business. Are teams important? Are they valued? Is innovation, creativity important? Is that encouraged? Those types of things. And then there's the underlying assumptions. So these are the kind of subconscious things that go on, the unwritten rules that people don't really think about, but they follow. So there's many different layers of culture, and you can analyse different businesses here. I've got a few different businesses, and sort of describe them. Usually when I'm doing a class on corporate culture, I get my students to make up dating profiles for these businesses, and what would these businesses, how would they advertise themselves as kind of, if they were people, and dating profiles, and that's really sort of looking at the culture and how you present yourself and what kind of characteristics you would have. So I suppose corporate culture is a bit like saying, if the business was a person, what would they be like? So we've already looked at Google, but I imagine I've actually been to Houses of Parliament. We went on the same trip actually, and they were very traditional, the Houses of Parliament, and the offices, and people were busy, bustling around, and there's very high security at the Houses of Parliament, obviously. Security at Google, but it was a little bit more understated, the security. So different types of personality, different types of culture. And this is a nice model when you're thinking about, well, what determines corporate culture? So norms determine corporate culture. So nature of the business, is it for profit, not for profit, public sector, private sector? That can have an influence on what the aims of the business are, so what the values of the business would be. Organisational structure, flat, tall, taller and more traditional or a hierarchical structure tends to be a little bit more, I suppose, bound by rules and policies, whereas a matrix, people people tend to work across departments, maybe a little bit more flexible. What are people rewarded for? What is good behaviour? What does the business try to encourage? Because you'll probably see more of it if you try to encourage it. What type of management styles? Is there a culture of fear because there's a very authoritarian management style, or is it laissez-faire? And I used to work for a business actually where some of the time when you went on a project, they said you were on the beach, so you sort of like, it was a metaphor for just not really doing anything and just relaxing really. But I remember the business trying to change it because they didn't like this thought that people were just messing around and not doing serious work, so they tried to change it to being called on the bench, so it sounded like more like you were like a sub in a football game, I suppose. But that's quite interesting from a cultural point of view. And then sanctions are punishments. So do you get punished for being late or not? Because if you don't get punished for being late, probably people, or if there's no like formal start time, people wouldn't, I imagine, naturally arrive at 9 o'clock in the morning. There'd be different times that they'd arrive. It maybe be a little bit more relaxed type of place. I remember working at one place where they told me to arrive at 9 o'clock, and so I arrived literally at 9 o'clock, and they were not very happy with that. And they took me to one side and said, when we said 9 o'clock, we sort of meant before 9 o'clock. So that wasn't when I was a teacher. I was just working for a business. So how does culture affect the stakeholders, and how do the stakeholders affect the culture? So what matters to the business might affect how respectfully they treat their employees or their customers, and how much respect they have for the government as well. And businesses don't just exist. Culture doesn't just exist. It's made up of people, and it's shaped. Culture is formed through the people that work for the organisations. So advantages and disadvantages, this has been more type of kind of question that you get on. So having a strong culture really creates, if you think about strong culture, you think about, team ethos, team mentality, creates a real sense of belonging and security. And that's you could link that to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, security level there. So that can help with motivation. Mistakes and misunderstandings are really minimalised. People say, are we on the same page? And, singing from the same hymn sheet, all of these tacky sayings that they use. But, it basically means, do you understand me? Are we able to communicate with each other? And communication is really important for businesses to be able to function and be productive. And if there's a strong culture where, we treat our customers with respect, even if we don't think they're going to make a repeat purchase because that's just the right thing to do, then your employees will start to do that and embody those beliefs and show those behaviours. So those can be the advantages of strong culture. However, it can be quite difficult to fit in to a business where there's quite a strong culture there. So is it called The Internship, that comedy film where they're interns at Google? So at first they find it a little bit different, and Google's got quite a strong culture there. So that could increase the amount of time that someone spends in their induction period, and so they're not fully being productive. And the stronger your team, the stronger your culture, I think the stronger the mentality that you're right and everybody else is wrong. And that might make it difficult to adapt to changes in the external environment. If there's, we do it this way because we've always done it this way, and if there's, the reason for doing it that way is long gone. If you've got a very strong culture that supports that, then things don't change. So that can be a problem. This culture section is on the specification, but it's not explicitly come up as a question before. So to me, that's a bit of a danger area. So I'd look over those things and think about, I think the dating profile one, obviously don't do a dating profile in your exam, but I think if you're struggling with thinking what is culture, it's corporate culture is like looking at a business and saying, if this was a person, how would I describe them? What type of person would they be? Okay, So good luck for your exam, hopefully with a question on culture.